We've all heard the story that autism is on the rise. It seems everyone has an opinion on why. Some blame vaccines, some blame parents. So what's really behind the rise in autism?
Too much propaganda, spiritual pollution, too many problems, not enough solutions, so many billionaires that make no contributions, gotta create fund and maintain our institution.
All right, listen up, y'all.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. This is another episode of All Things Education Official. I am your host and educator, DrAbdullah, giving you educational news from a foundational Black American man's perspective. If you like what you're hearing, you like what you're seeing, please subscribe, comment, like, and share. Subscribe, comment, like, and share. And if you like what you're hearing, please go to the About section and buy me a cup of coffee. Also, follow me on my social media handles at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Rumble, LinkedIn, and X. It will be greatly appreciated. Today, we're going to be delving into something that has been more of a phenomenon for me, but it's been going on for a while as of late. We're talking about the rise of autism in Black children. And in doing so, we're going to listen to Carol Jenkins of the news broadcast, Black America. Please find them. I'm going to leave that link in the description section, but her name is Carol Jenkins in Black America. She's going to be interviewing Maria Davis Pierre, a licensed therapist, a mother of two autistic children, an individual diagnosed with autism herself. Her experiences with autism and her assessment of the pitfalls of the healthcare professional industry as it pertains to Black children must be heard.
Today, a conversation about autism and autism spectrum disorder. And while the incidence in Black communities is the same as overall, diagnosis and currently, crucially, treatment is often significantly delayed for Black children.
As an educator, I remember, and I've been in this thing for 24 years, and I remember not even truly understanding what autism was. I didn't have any reference points because I had no children in my school that had autism. It was to the point where I actually believed that autism was a white child's disease because I knew no Black children with autism. But in the last 10 to 15 years, I've seen a serious uptick in cases of autism, so much so that there's a larger percentage of them in the schools. I work in urban settings, urban schools, predominantly Black schools, and I'm starting to see it more prevalently. To say that a child is autistic is not even a shocker anymore. And it's grown by leaps and bounds. But the truth on why will be touched upon next.
And I was astonished when I was looking at the recent statistics that they're using 1 in 44 children is autistic. My first career life was as a speech pathologist, and I worked with autistic children. In those days, it was 1 in 150 or 200 or 300, if they even, counted or did bother to count. But now 1 in 44 children in the United States of America can be described as autistic.
What I think is happening is that healthcare professionals are more aware of how to properly diagnose. So children are getting their diagnosis. I don't think it's like an epidemic that's occurring. I think it's more awareness within the medical field, and
Right.
People are getting the proper diagnosis.
It is of no surprise that the pitfalls and racism and bias and systemic bias is the culprit in this ongoing assault on Black American children in particular. It's imperative that we are vigilant in our seeking of knowledge and the assessment of our children, and that we are studied and aware of the symptoms and symptomology of any affliction, be it autism or anything that may harm or impair our children. But I really need you to pay attention to what is said next.
So let's talk about this disconnect, because we, said in the beginning of the show that the rates are essentially the same, but the treatment, the diagnosis and the treatment for Black children is so much later, which really interferes with taking care of the symptoms.
So truly what it has to do with racism and bias against the Black community. There is a overall 1.5 year gap between when a Black child gets a diagnosis and when a white child gets a diagnosis. A lot of that has to do with the stigma outside of our community as well as the stigma within our community. And really what it boils down to is the biases of healthcare professionals. The reason the CDC came out and said that there is no difference in races is because it was obvious that Black children, Latino children were not getting diagnosed at the same rate white children were. Studies have shown that a Black parent can go into a medical professional's office and talk about their concerns, and it will take them 3 to 4, 5 times of mentioning it before the healthcare professional does the next step. So of course, this delays diagnosis. There's also bias within the actual evaluations. So there is so much that has to do with just biases that keep Black children from getting the proper diagnosis. We are the most undiagnosed and misdiagnosed. We're more than likely to get a behavior diagnosis like ADHD or oppositional defiance before autism. Technically no treatment for autism because it's just who we are. But as far as early intervention, like your speech therapies, your occupational therapies, that's when research has shown that children really absorb that. Not to say that they can't after 3, but before 3 is really a crucial time.
According to the article entitled Autism in the Black Community on www.autismspeaks.org, thanks to public awareness and outreach campaigns in underserved communities, the most recent CDC autism prevalence report shows that the prevalence of autism in the Black community is, for the first time, higher than in the non-Hispanic white community. Despite this, research shows that Black children often get diagnosed later than white children. The average age of diagnosis for Black children is 5.4 years, compared to the national average of 4.9 years, with Black children being diagnosed over 3 years after their parents first expressed concerns about their child's development to their pediatrician. Systemic biases in healthcare and cultural misconceptions about who can and cannot be autistic contribute to delays in diagnosis for Black children. Historically, autism was thought to primarily affect white male children, a common misconception that may still influence healthcare providers today. According to a CDC report, Black children are more likely to receive an autism diagnosis if they have an intellectual disability. 50.8% of Black autistic children have ID, which is intellectual disability, compared to 31.8% of white children. This suggests that Black children without intellectual disabilities and with a more subtle autism presentation may be overlooked. Simply stated, what that means is that if a child has autism, but they have an intellectual disability, it's more likely that they will be labeled as behavioral, as problematic. There will be a behavioral disorder, emotional disorder, or what they say OHI, which is other health impairments, which essentially means we don't know what's going on with this kid, but we're going to give them an IEP so that we can give that child services. Whether the services are subpar or not, well, if you're talking about in our communities, typically they are. And if you are in a community of the dominant society, European descendant Americans, they tend to have the best services. But let me say this, in order to properly safeguard our children against the delayed obtainment of services and proper diagnosis of autism and any disease for that matter, we must rely upon Black American healthcare professionals and experts, trusted, recommended Black American healthcare professionals. While we are building this infrastructure, though, we must rely on the research and become abreast and acquainted of the latest and most recent advancements in diagnostic tools and strategies. When it comes to our children, we must demand that our children be given every possible opportunity to be successful, and this is done by demanding that all possibilities be explored and not just a diagnosis that biased healthcare workers, be they Black immigrant, Indian, European, it does not matter. For that matter, sometimes neglectful Black American healthcare workers, but we do recognize that Black American healthcare workers, Black Americans, we're cut from a different cloth, so we really, really, truly care about our own children. But we must demand that they forego those biases that they deem are necessary for Black American children. Once again, this is another episode of All Things Education Official. I am your host and educator, Dr. Abdullah. Please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Rumble, LinkedIn, and X. And if you like the content, please feel free to go to the About section, buy me a cup of coffee. It will be greatly, greatly appreciated. You are dismissed. Also, please feel free to follow me and my good brother, Michael Burt. We just started our own channel called The Grit Network, honest conversation about all things relative to the community. We'd love to see you over. Follow us at The Grit Network. Thank you and goodbye.
Yeah! You are all expurgated. You are dismissed.
Too much propaganda, spiritual pollution. Too many problems, not enough solutions. So many billionaires that make no contributions. Gotta create fund and maintain our institutions. Word to the masses, our government is backwards. Only thing I've learned is what a barrel and a crab is. Deploying all these tactics to keep us all distracted. Scrolling on our gadgets and we scroll right past it. While we caught up in the fashion, they sitting back laughing. This education we're lacking, all the laws they be passing. Peep the curriculum, you see they're subtracting the necessary work. These kids mentally absent, turned out full plastic.